I just heard that. Did everyone heard what I've been talking so far? Okay. Anyways, thank you to our generous sponsors. It's covering our platinum and gold sponsors and silver sponsors, All Traffic Data, PTV Group, HHPF, IDAX, McKinsey, Streetlight, and WSP. Now I am pleased to introduce our first speaker for today, Joseph Marek. Joe is the Traffic Program Manager for Clackamas County in the Northwest Oregon, where he has lived and worked for over 29 years. He oversees the Traffic Engineering Group, Drive to Zero program, and the Motor Carrier Safety program. Joe led the effort to create the county's first Transportation Safety Action Plan in 2012 and an update in 2019. The county's unique approach has been one that has recognized that traffic crashes affect all departments in the county, and a goal of 0 fatalities cannot be achieved unless the goal is embraced by the entire organization. During emergencies, Joe also helps in the Emergency Operations Center, serving as operations chief along with other supporting roles as needed. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Is my screen visible or not?
It was for a second, and now it is no longer. There you go, right there.
Okay.
Yep, perfect.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm happy to be here today virtually to talk about some of the experience with the western wildfires that occurred here in Clackamas County this fall.
I think we lost your presentation again, Joe.
Oh dear. Okay. Let's see. Is it back?
It is. Yep.
Let me see. Did it scroll?
There you go.
Perfect. All right. So what I want to talk about today is a little bit of the timeline of events that occurred with the fires in Clackamas County, some perspectives of working in our Emergency Operations Center, and a quick summary about when it's all over and some of the lessons learned. So if we flash back to Monday, September 7th, which was Labor Day, we had very dry east winds, low humidity. We started to see a bunch of small brush fires crop up across the county. Our Emergency Operations Center was activated on Monday, and I'd had a conversation with my supervisor who was helping out about some road evacuations that were occurring to get people out. And at that time, we didn't know what was going to happen, so I was not required to go into the Emergency Operations Center. On that Monday night, about 11:30 p.m., we get a frantic call from the place where my wife keeps her horse saying that there was a brush fire and they had to evacuate, and they crammed 5 horses into a 4-horse trailer to evacuate them from Wilsonville to a barn near Newburgh. And so in the middle of the night, as we were getting the horses settled in, another woman brought in some horses from a barn near Molalla that was part of another, evacuated as part of another fire, which was like a really bad omen. And so started the wildfire events. On Tuesday the 8th, the fires were out. We hauled our horses back to the barn, and I started preparing to go into the Emergency Operations Center the next day because the fires were rapidly growing, both local fires as well as the Beachy Creek and Riverside fires, which by that time had started to really blow up and were becoming a significant threat. Meanwhile, the dry east winds are relentlessly continuing. So on Wednesday, I go into the Emergency Operations Center and was helping with some of the evacuation mapping and reviewing roads, coordinating with our road department on where to set barricades. And at this time, the fires were moving incredibly fast. There were times that the fire service, fire providers actually didn't know where the boundaries of the fires were, and so they were setting conservative evacuation boundaries, not knowing exactly what was going on with the fires because it was so smoky and so windy they couldn't get resources out to either fly or establish accurate boundaries. Because of my experience with evacuating the horses, I also ended up helping with livestock evacuation, and so that quickly overwhelmed me, and we were able to bring in somebody from our dog services department that had a lot of experience dealing with livestock. But I was working with nonprofit horse places on getting horses evacuated, and working with OSU Extension Service on evacuating other livestock, which was just this whole massive thing in itself, an amazing network of volunteers and dedicated people loaning horse trailers and stock trailers and going to pick up stock where people didn't have trailers. It was actually pretty amazing. Meanwhile, as the fires continued to expand, we became very concerned as these fires were pushing towards some of our cities, including Estacada, Molalla, Colton, Oregon City, and Sandy, and the evacuation boundaries kept growing and growing. This is actually a screenshot from Clackamas Fire District 1 on September 9th, just showing where these were all just the local brush fires that were occurring. So this didn't include the Beachy Creek and Riverside fires, the two ginormous fires. And the road closures were literally, they were changing in some cases by the minute. And so we were trying to keep this list up to date, communicating with our road department where to set barricades, and publishing the maps through the county website, which I'll have a slide that shows that. And then thank you, ODOT, for having Trip Check, because we extensively used Trip Check for recording the road closures, as well as people being able to use the traffic cameras, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So we were maintaining a pretty basic spreadsheet just with the list of roads, the reason for the closures, the types of barricades, and then Carl and Bikram Raghavans that works with me, they were helping get all this information put onto Trip Check so that we could have images such as what's shown in the lower right of the screen showing the road closures, so that people that were trying to get into an area knew the status of the roads. And so it was a really helpful way for us to be able to share that information in addition to the published maps. As we moved into Thursday, with the fires continuing to expand and the evacuation boundaries continuing to expand, we were seeing some pretty mass evacuations with a lot of traffic congestion. And as the extension of the evacuations moved towards Oregon City, we had a lot of people pushing in towards Oregon City and I-205, which we have a number of pinch points because a lot of people were evacuating to Portland, whether it was the Oregon Convention Center where they were doing sheltering, or the Clackamas Town Center where we had a lot of people setting up in their RVs. And overwhelming our rather primitive road network became a real concern in the event that these fires expanded really, really rapidly. We were worried that we wouldn't be able to get people out. When you look at this particular map, the light red is where the big fires were. So this is a Riverside, Beachy Creek, and Lions Head fire, and there were some other small fires. But at this point, we had almost 2/3 of the county that was under evacuation orders. And as you look at the roadway system, we have Interstate 5 up here, Interstate 205, Highway 211 from Estacada, Highway 213, and Highway 99E. And we have two interchanges here in Oregon City that the bulk of all this traffic was going towards. And so as you can imagine, we had a lot of congestion. The queues on Highway 213 at one point were close to 7 miles long. We had put in place, working with ODOT, some PCMS signs to try to get people to evacuate over to 99E to either go south out to I-5 or at least come in on 99E to try to divvy up traffic. But there's just not a lot of ways to get out. We couldn't really do contraflow because of the types of highways. And so as we were contingency planning, and we were also dealing with people, the evacuation notices expanded in the afternoon, so we had people trying to get home from work to pack up their house, as well as those that were leaving, because this wasn't anticipated by a lot of people. And so it was a bit of a surprise. And as we're doing our contingency planning, we're realizing that the system may be overwhelmed and we actually may not be able to get people out. And so we started looking at other options to open up other areas other than this interchange at 99E here and the interchange up at 213 here, which were quickly becoming overwhelmed. And so we started working with our Water Environment Services that actually owns this old 82nd Avenue bridge connecting Oregon City to Gladstone. That's a pedestrian bridge, and we started developing a contingency plan with Oregon City and Gladstone to open this up to one-way traffic, to send traffic through to the Gladstone interchange so we could at least get traffic distributed over 3 interchanges in hopes to relieve some of the congestion. And so we worked with ODOT to stage PCMS signs. We staged traffic signs at our sign shop, which was nearby, and actually had the bollards unlocked on the bridge and had removed some of the vertical obstructions on the bridge so we could actually use it for one-way traffic in the event that Oregon City actually had to evacuate, because with 30,000 people, it would have been tough to evacuate. Fortunately, that didn't occur. And all this is moving very, very, very quickly. And so I'm working in the EOC, talking about these contingency plans, and then working with my crew to try to turn those into traffic control plans, turn those into something that we could actually implement. Gladstone also had developed evacuation zones in the event that they had to evacuate, because for about 24 hours, we just didn't know what was going on with the fires. There was an ODOT rep in the EOC, which was terrific. So all the coordination work with ODOT, I had a person that I could talk to just in another room. And so that helped facilitate getting things done quickly. And so able to avoid some of the red tape that sometimes we have working between agencies. And then adjusting signal timing to aid in the evacuations, both ODOT adjusting timing, us adjusting timing. Carl spent a bit of time in the field changing timing on signals that we didn't have remote access to. And so it's just a massive, very fast moving team effort. And again, people really relying on the traffic cameras and the work and trip check. So all of that work, all the people that have helped set up that backbone infrastructure, it really paid off for this incident. This is actually a screenshot of the town center from one of our traffic cameras showing as the RVs were starting to accumulate at the town center where people were taking refuge that were evacuated from their houses. We ended up filling up the town center with people camping that were evacuees. We had sanitary stations, washing stations. We had a mental health triage team out there helping people, because you can imagine this is horribly, horribly, horribly stressful for people. Not only the evacuation, any of those, all of you that experience this, the horrible air quality, people with compromised respiratory systems had a very difficult time during this extremely smoky weather. These are just some shots actually we got from either our maintenance folks or our sheriff's office. The picture on the top right is a fire at a lumber mill near Malala, RSG Lumber, where some stacks of logs were burning quite ferociously. And many people, you know, this was like a living hell as people were dealing with this. Switching gears to the Emergency Operations Center. So for quite a few years, I've helped out in the Emergency Operations Center, and generally when I go in there, when the county declares an emergency and it's activated, I'll serve as operations chief, or I'll serve whatever role needs to be taken care of. In this particular incident with the wildfires, I was helping with the mapping and the livestock evacuation. I had actually spent 3 months earlier serving as operations chief, overseeing the public health response during COVID. And so having a more of a bit role in the EOC was really welcome for me. But some of the work I was doing, which fortunately was in my wheelhouse versus public health, is again, helping with all that road coordination. You can see some maps behind me on a bulletin board showing the evacuation. So I was reviewing that mapping, again, coordinating with our road department to make sure barricades were set, and we were keeping track of where those barricades were set, because it's really important from a liability standpoint and information standpoint. And then we were coordinating with law enforcement on places where we needed staff checkpoints because worries about looting and other types of activity. And then as we were doing contingency planning for evacuations, of working with law enforcement and fire on, if this happens, we're going to have to do that. If that happens, we're going to have to do this. So really having those contingency plans in place so we would be ready to execute those, and providing other support as needed. Fortunately, the livestock thing just went on for a couple days, and that was quickly overwhelmed with that. But the person that took over was doing an absolutely phenomenal job. And I never knew how interconnected the livestock and horse community is and how giving they are. I mean, I heard stories out of Salem of one company that actually loaned out brand new horse trailers for people to evacuate their livestock with. It's just amazing how people come together in situations as this. So for those of you that have not worked in an emergency operations center before, there's a command structure that is identical to what is used in law enforcement and fire during incidents. So there's a command at the top, the people making the big decisions. And then in the operations section, which I was working in, that's a group that gets stuff done. We're the group that has objectives to achieve within that operational period that we execute. And then the planning section is the group that's typically looking, one time period ahead to a week ahead of things that need to occur, as well as preparing the situation status reports each day. And then there's a logistics section for stuff we have to purchase or resources that we need. A liaison section, typically coordinating outreach type work, like with our public information officers. And then a finance section, because obviously we're spending money and we have to have that approved and tracked, otherwise we are in trouble. So this is just a screenshot of one of the situation reports. Those are prepared for each operational period. And the importance of those is to document for command and others what is happening, as well as if you're passing those operations on to a new crew, that they know what is going on so that they can carry forth those missions, and that continuity of operation is maintained throughout the incident, because you don't have time to start things over when you're doing this kind of response. Once it's all over, and thankfully eventually it was all over, there's fixing all the damaged stuff. And so obviously we had some traffic signs that were damaged, surprisingly not too many. There were several signs that I actually looked at where the fire blew through hot and low, and the sign sheeting and the signs were actually not damaged, which was pretty amazing. But there were some spots, so we had to review the road system, make sure we didn't have damaged bridges, damaged signs, damaged pavement, as well as getting these corridors opened back up. And particularly with all the burned trees and the wind, there were just trees scattered everywhere. And all that has to be surveyed, all that has to be monitored for safety. There was and continues to be a tremendous number of logging operations to keep the roadside safe, so cutting those trees that could potentially harm somebody, as well as a lot of private timberland that's still trying to salvage timber that burned in order to derive some value out of that timber. And so a lot of cleanup before you can get those roads open back up to the public.
Looks like we may have lost Joe, so we will give him just a minute to reconnect. And please keep the questions coming in. I know we've got one so far, so any questions we'll make sure to pass those on to Joe, and he can answer them for all of us. Well, not knowing what issues he might have encountered, Julie, would you like to, we can introduce Dan probably at this time, and I have him calling me on my other line, so I'm going to mute myself and see what may have happened. Give me 1 second, please.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you, Carl. So in the meantime, I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of background information about Dan, who will be our next speaker. Dan Dorrell worked for Washington DOT from 91 to 96, building bridges on Spirit Lake Highway, one of the highest in Washington. And he came to Medford in 95, still building bridges until 2001, and then he went into development review and then into signals. Dan currently works in the ODOT District 8 office, and he's going to also share his experience with the wildfires. But before we give Dan the floor, let's just check back with Carl and see if Joe's able to resume.
He's attempting to reconnect, but not having the best of luck. So let's go ahead and go with Dan, and then we can jump back to Joe if he's able to reconnect.
Sounds great. All right, take it away, Dan.
I am changing the presenter to Dan. And let's unmute Dan.
Right. There we go.
So
can everybody hear me now?
There we go. You can hear you.
Okay.
Not seeing a presentation from you just yet.
Okay. Let me get over to screen 2 here.
I see
Okay.
Google Earth aerial right now.
Okay, great. That's good. So you can actually, so I just want to say first off, you guys, I was animal sitting for a friend who's out of town, and the Wi-Fi was lost over there. I was hoping to have an hour to put this together, and I had about 15 minutes. So it's I'll do the best I can. If you get on Google and you go to the time, one thing I just want to mention too, if anybody does, a lot of people don't know this, if you do want to zoom in, control scroll works whether you're actually presenter or watching too. You can still zoom in and out. If you go to the history bar here, you can see the fire right there. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but it's already on the satellite images. And so this is Alameda Street in Ashland. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of a feel for where it started, because it's called the Alameda Fire. And it started right here. This is a dog park where people take their dogs to walk. And it started next to the water treatment plant. And some friends that live right over here. I have 4 friends that lost their houses in this fire. Kind of like Joe Marek was saying, I had a bad omen that morning. Yeah, I guess he had one too, it sounded like. The winds were blowing so hard I had just finished a fence I'd been working on all summer, and it had a temporary pin in the gates, and the wind bent and broke the pin. And I got up in the morning and the gate was smashing into the gravel driveway. And so that was the beginning of the day. Drove into a restaurant in Talent to get a bite to eat and saw the smoke coming across the highway. If you guys don't know the area here, Talent is just north of Ashland a little ways. And you could see the smoke coming from down here at that point in time. And I got a call from a friend of mine, a retired ER doc, Paul Rosticus, and he told me he was bringing Ruth over to my house to evacuate. And so I had people like right afternoon on my way home from lunch coming to my house who ended up spending the night. Ruth is 97 years old, and her son and daughter were at the coast, and they were coming home. And they actually were coming home. They had come through the Apple Gate, and they were not allowed to pass through Jacksonville to come back. They had to take a back way around and work their way through Pioneer slowly over to my house, which is in here off Coleman Creek. The evacuations went all the way up to this property corner, all the way up into here. We had mainly strong winds blowing north-northwest, but every once in a while we would get a really strong west wind. And we were afraid the fire was going to come up and get my place. It came close. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to go over an overview of what happened. I talked to Sergio, one of our incident response guys, and originally when the fire started and started working its way north, which, like Joe was saying, it was very quick. It was amazing how fast that it went north. They were able to close exit 14 northbound down south of Ashland here, on the south end of Ashland, right here, right away. But they weren't sure where to close southbound. Originally, they started at exit 19 here, but the fire was racing northward so quick, they very soon after that had to close down the Phoenix exit southbound, and then eventually had to go all the way up into Medford and close South Medford exit. This was challenging with some of our emergency response folks because the police were trying to send people on I-5 northbound, and they did not know that I-5 northbound, the fire was on both sides of the highway and in the median. And so there was an argument, and we had to get a manager out there that had some pull to let the guy with the badge know, no, you can't let them go north. And the challenge with this fire was we had the fire on 99, the main north-south route, and I-5, and there really isn't any other north-south routes that are substantial. You have to go up into the mountains to get around. So I'm going to poke around on this a little more, and then I'm going to go to some more interesting stuff here soon. But one of the things I wanted to mention was the officials in Ashland were quite upset with us, and they wanted, after this all happened, us to have some sort of a temporary on-ramp at possibly Eagle Mill, and then down here at North Mountain, they wanted us to build some sort of an on-ramp that could be gated. So in a future emergency that people could get out and get away from the fire faster. Basically what happened was most of the people were going north away from the fire because it was burning to the north, and 99 was becoming a parking lot real quick coming out of Ashland. Nobody could get out. We have a 3-lane section here that still worked real well. We had a road diet done here, and what Jeremiah and our folks did was make it 2 lanes north and 1 south to help try to get people out of there. People were abandoning their cars in the highway and running because the highway was all plugged up. People were stopped and just leaving their cars and running. That was another reason it took so long to get I-5 going again, was because I-5 was full of empty cars. As we get up here into Phoenix, you can see the decimation. It's so sad. This was a really nice manufactured home park. And the fire was so strange. It just would skip some and burn some all over, everywhere it did that. You you'd be amazed that some places were still standing and looked fine, and all the way around them, things would be burned up. Matter of fact, I want to show you something back in Talent that had that. Where am I? Oh, too far south. Excuse me. Oh, it's still in Talent. All the houses on this side of the road were fine for quite a ways. This is coming up at the hill into Talent. The satellite image changed, but this all burned too, even though it looks like it's green. Pretty much all of these businesses are gone. It went across the highway and got some businesses and didn't get others. The pink that you see on the ground was the retardant from the airlines, the jet, and there was an old prop, turbo prop, dropping fire retardant. As you can see, this was just completely decimated. The whole area, everything is down. It was so interesting because you see all the chimneys everywhere and all the steel structures poking up, but the houses are just completely gone. This is what I thought I was in Phoenix before. I wasn't. I wanted to show you this. It's so interesting. The fire completely decimated this mobile home park, or this was actually not mobile home, some manufactured and some stick-built homes. Ruth's house was right here. I'm going to show you a detailed picture in a little bit here. But she spent the night with me that night, and in the morning her house was gone. And so she is now in assisted living. I'm not sure if she'll get back in the house again or not. But you can see all these are fine. Everything through here is pretty much fine. Some of these burned in here, and then this all is fine. And then this was a motel that was long-term residents that all burned, every bit of it. Anyway, you can just see how it skipped over areas. Here is more retardant from the planes dropping. You can see the pink areas up here too. And how the orchards are watered well, so the fire went to this side and was on this side and just kept moving north. And like I said, it just kept closing exits as you went north. You can see more pink on the hillsides here from the planes trying to do the best they could. And this is Phoenix, and this is our new interchange in Phoenix, and the diverging diamond. And it's still kept moving through. You can see fire retardant here, and then it burned here. These are all gone. These are all mobile home parks that are completely gone, pretty much. Just really sad. This is an area that I've been pushing to get some bike paths and sidewalks in. It's kind of embarrassing because it's a very urban area. It doesn't follow our blueprint for urban design, but I know that our area manager is trying to find money right now. We're trying to get some sidewalks and bike lanes built to help regenerate this community right now. We're desperately trying to find some funding to move in that direction. Anyway, the fire just kept going north and finally stopped at South Medford. And then there was a fire over the viaduct and north of Medford that was up by Central Point. And I am not sure how that one was lit, but as a lot of you people know, there was fires everywhere that day. And we had to close down 99, like Joe was saying, because of looting. There's always got to be the bad people, I guess. And so a lot of people were having to get around town, had to go way out here to Dark Hollow and come back around this way to get into town, which basically they were going right, the street, my house is in here, right by our property. So I had cars stacked up every direction here, like a half mile back, because people were trying to get from the south to the north on these perimeter roads. And it was the same with some of these surrounding roads on the east side, because there's just nothing to get around. It was very, very challenging. I'm going to switch over to some other stuff here I want to show you. Here's some pictures that were taken day of. As you can see, the smoke is just terrible, just so thick. Here is people abandoning their cars and walking, just leaving their cars and going, just getting out of there as fast as they can. And cars just became stacked up. I wanted to show a couple videos that are kind of dramatic.
Just so you know, Dan, the videos come through, at least for me, about a frame every 3 seconds, but it could be different for others.
Okay. Look how low he is. Some good pilots. And I just wanted to show one more. Okay. Lot more pictures of destruction. Kind of like what Joe said, it was like a living hell. So that day, Ruth came to my house, and Paul and Swampy and Cindy, Ruth's son, they could not get back to their houses. They were evacuated. They were not allowed back in the area. And we stayed up all night. We had someone up awake all night. We took shifts because the wind kept changing and blowing west every once in a while. And we could keep hearing, we heard explosions all night long, propane tanks, gas tanks. And we were pretty scared. We thought the fire might come our way, but luckily it did not. Let me see here. I wanted to show you. Okay. Some pictures that I took. This is Ruth, who lost her house in the fire. A good, very good friend of mine's mom. Probably will not be going back. This is was her house. And Carl, do you hear me and see everything fine?
I'm seeing your kind of presentation view, so not a full screen.
Okay. Well, I'll just do the best I can. This was her Civic.
It's working fine.
Which is pretty much brand new. This is the automatic garage door opener and chain, still sticking up from the garage door. You can see how it melted her car doors. They look wavy. The fire was so intense, just hard to imagine. This is Ruth's neighborhood, what's left of it afterwards. There was another picture of her house, her car, what's left. The garage door is the only really metal sticking up. Like I said, there's metal sticking up everywhere. You see a lot of water tanks. That was the pool and her neighborhood, and what's left of the houses in that area. Kind of interesting to see a pool and a hydrant in the middle of all that. And this is off topic, but I just saw this the other day and I took a few pictures. I could not believe that they have this. This is actually a TV screen on the back of trucks that are advertising. And I'm sure that's gonna help us get to zero crashes. Anyway, that was just something that surprised me that that's even allowed to be on vehicles. So off topic, there's a picture I had. This is Green Valley Pump. My well went out literally just 5 days before the fire, and they replaced my well like 2 days before the fire. So I was lucky in that regard. just wanted to show some of the pictures of some of the vehicles. The fire was just so intense. It's just hard to imagine. Later that night, I wanted to go in town and actually see what was going on while the fires were still burning and drive through it briefly just to see. And it did look like a war zone. Many places were all burned to the ground. It was just rubble driving through downtown Phoenix. And you could still see the blue flames coming out because they had not turned off the gas yet. So it was just like rocks and rubble with blue flames below it, hissing. Scary scene. This was an RV, a really nice one. And all of these trickles are aluminum. And you saw this in a lot of places where they would get so hot that you'd have these little aluminum rivulets. And you'd see, it was interesting, you'd see cars that weren't really that near anything, and the heat must have been so bad they would still burn. Like I say, you'd see places like this, Puck's Donuts. Their plastic little donut bin outside did not burn for some reason. And I don't get it. It just, no rhyme or reason to it. Right across the street here is a pizza place. They had a pizza oven imported from Italy, and they were trying to get open, and they've been struggling financially for a couple of years, and then their whole place burned. But yet across the street here, the pump house did not burn. And kind of like Joe was saying, it was amazing to see the output of all the good people trying to help out the fire victims, and still to this day, because you know it's far from being rebuilt. It's not going to be done for a couple of years, if not longer. There's so much work to do. You can see in this picture a little bit. But my computer's slow. I can't blow it up that well, but oh, it disappeared. Anyway, chimneys, any metal sticking up that's holding up metals. There's a water tank, but you just would see chimneys everywhere. Here's a chimney with no house. It's just very depressing. And like I said, I didn't have much time to present the slide or prepare it, so that's about all I've got, guys. This was me. I took a week off work afterwards to clear my acre of property of combustible debris. Since a lot of my neighbors aren't, I at least want to keep my property clean and do the best I can. But that's about all I had time to put together in the short time I had, since I had to change houses because the Wi-Fi went out at the other one. Is Joe available again to finish, or?
So he texted me. He unfortunately, Joe lost total internet at his location, so he might not be. It's looking like he won't be able to rejoin us. But Dan, I have a question that kind of came in for him, but I'd also like to pose it to you. There was a question that asked about any water or sewer infrastructure being damaged. Do you know down in that area what may or may not have been damaged regarding that infrastructure, and you know, what you've seen or heard?
As far as I know, it did not damage it. There is a pump line I could go back to on Google Map if we'll come back in. That I know that there is a pump house south of Talent that gets the water on into Ashland, because they depend on Medford water now. They used to have their own, but they do depend on water, and it's right in here. But it was in an area that did not burn. It's right in here. There's a little pump house somewhere, but I'm not aware of that it did have any problem as far as that goes, that we had any problems.
If anyone has any other questions, please submit them using the question feature. It looks like I have a couple more coming in. I got a question, Dan, from Kate asking, do they plan on moving forward with the idea of the temp on-ramps?
You know, that's above my pay grade. But what I would say is I doubt it. You know, it depends upon how hard the local jurisdiction pushes. It was bad. I mean, 99 was a parking lot and I-5 was a parking lot. So even if you would have had temporary on-ramps, I don't know if you could have gotten anywhere on I-5. But you know, I don't know where that'll go. It doesn't sound like a bad idea, at least if they were gated. If you had another way, the way the world seems to be changing, and these fires seem to keep coming more and more every year. It's amazing how much fire retardant they dropped.
Yeah, do you know what the cleanup is required for that fire retardant?
I do not know, but basically, since this is an urban fire, it's considered to be very toxic because, you know, a lot of mobile homes went up, manufactured housing, so it was not just wood smoke. And when you would drive through here, it's getting better now with the rains, but it was terrible smelling, you know, after the fire. It still is in places. Just really, really bad.
We got a question from Jennifer. Were there any impacts to the Medford viaduct? And do you think it'll affect the decisions on how they move forward with plans for the viaduct?
No, it did not affect the viaduct. And, you know, I think it probably won't affect with plans to move forward on the viaduct. And that is such an expensive project that it's hard to fathom how they're going to handle that. Right now, it's seismic retrofitting and talking of adding another lane on each side, since it is the constriction point coming through this area. But I think at this point, all there is planning is all that has been done at this point, 30,000 foot look at it. So no, I don't think it affected that. There was burning up here too. I didn't look at this as much. Let's see if it shows it up here too.
Dan, I also got a question from Randy. He wants to know if the power was intentionally cut, and did that impact any signals during evacuation?
The power was out at my place for 7 or 8 days. Thank God I had a hot tub to use the toilet. But the power was out everywhere pretty much because the telephone poles burned. And so the lines were down everywhere and power was just out. I'm not sure what they did. I'm sure in the farther perimeter reaches of the fire, they were cutting the power as fast as they could. I got to say, the power company crews were literally amazing. It was like the next day they were out there working on it. The next couple of days, they had power crews from out of state, Spectrum, Verizon, all the companies were pretty amazing. They were out there very fast working on it. And it still took 7 days for me to get power back. Some people had it back quite a bit faster, but a lot of us were out of power for quite a while.
So Julie, before we end today, I would suggest that we post the slide real quick about upcoming events and have you review it. I don't think your presentation of that made it across, and Krista, one of our board members, also mentioned maybe the proposed date plug for the winter workshop as well.
Okay. Sounds great. Yeah, the message that I got midway through my announcements kind of implied that maybe the sound wasn't quite turned on. So first of all, apologies for some of the technical difficulties today, and I'd be happy to move back into some of the announcements. Carl, do you want to show the screen?
Yeah.
If anybody does want that presentation with all the videos and stuff, I can send it to them too. I have a link to that if anybody does want to see it. It was statewide, not just this area.
Well, I'll go ahead and get started as Carl, you're getting that set up. So the first announcement I wanted to make was that the ballots closed recently for the Oregon ITE elections, and I am pleased to announce our new Secretary Treasurer is, drumroll, Molly McCormick, and Carl Olson here, who's been managing your Q&A, will be our Vice President. Maggie Lynn will be President, and I will be Past President. New terms start January 1st. For upcoming events, we have a couple events planned in the planning stages for 2021. We have our annual winter workshop. It's traditionally been a full day event on a Monday in January. This year we were looking at 2 half days. Carl, did you have the dates that you wanted to share?
Yeah, so Krista mentioned that we are looking at February 4th and the 11th. I believe they are Thursdays at 2 separate weeks, if I'm not mistaken.
Perfect. So I think right now we're finalizing the speaker lineup, and we'll open registration for that as soon as we finalize some of those details. Also in January, we are planning a webinar on inclusive public engagement during the COVID-19 pandemic. So the next webinar and winter workshop should be in our biweekly email newsletter soon, as well as on our website at OregonITE.org. Also, for any students in the room, scholarship applications are open now. Since you may have some time off during the holidays, now would be a good time to go ahead and apply. If you haven't received an email direct to that, you can visit OregonITE.org for more details on our scholarships. Oregon ITE open positions. We have one position that's open right now. It is the social chair. This person traditionally plans some in-person events, but right now we're looking for someone with some creative new ideas to keep everyone engaged until we can resume in-person events again. And then lastly, I'll thank our sponsors again. Supporting Oregon ITE and bringing you this webinar. We've had a generous outpouring of support from our sponsors this year, and they keep Oregon ITE moving forward and bring you awesome events. So thank you again to our sponsors, and thank you everyone for coming. Apologize again for the technology issues today. Anything else, Carl? Any other questions come in or other housekeeping?
No other questions, but a big thank you to Dan, and I know Joe fell off, but a big thank you to him. Thank you to our presenters. I know that Dan and Joe are both incredibly busy, not only with still cleanup of this, but also dealing with working in a COVID environment. So thank you to them.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all, and happy Tuesday.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.